right now I'm working on wiring and getting the outside walls taken care of. So when I move the charge controller into this space, what it ended up doing is that this is an insulated wall. The cavity above it, the cavity above it here is going to be insulated to keep any gas fumes from getting to the upstairs. And then below it, this room below is the what we're calling the clean room, is now his craft room. That's going to have an insulated ceiling as well. The wall behind it is just bad insulation. So previously I was going to put the load center below this wall here. It was going to be down in the utility room under that landing, and that means that all I would have had to have done was run power from the solar system here down into that room where the breaker box was, and I could split off from there to everything. I wouldn't have to really do a whole lot of outside wall work. Well, the problem now is that because this is on a wall that's going to be insulated above and below, I've got to pretty much run a lead wire from the box to every single room and get all the outside outlets done like I had to before. So that's causing a little bit of a delay because now I have to run a lot more wire. I'm gonna have to run it eventually anyways, but now I have to run a lot more in order to get the house to the point where we can get it spray foamed. So pretty much a large chunk, I'd say probably a good 40 to 50% of my wiring is going to have to be done before I can foam. The next problem is I don't have my air conditioning or my plumbing or things in like that. Wiring is typically one of the last things you do because it's very easy to route wires around other things. If you have a ductwork, you can't just bend a ductwork around into pipe or things like that. So you start with your most rigid structures first and then go from there. So you typically start with your HVAC because that's very defined as far as where it has to go. Then you go plumbing, and then you do electrical last. I'm going to have to do this kind of reverse, run some electrical wires first. And I'm keeping in mind of where my plumbing and HVAC should be, so hopefully I won't get into a problem later. But it's just a pain in the butt and another delay, and another delay. But we're getting there. I wish we had our water system set up. That's a lot of gallons we're losing. So we've had 2 of the last 3 days has just been very cloudy and just downpouring like crazy. So I've been doing some work inside. I worked yesterday. I'll get out and do some more work today, but I want to give you a quick update on our RV. So a couple videos ago, I ran the gas line and I hooked this hose up running into our RV here. Now prior, I added this line just recently, but I had the hose basically just hooked up to one of these regulators to replace the tank. And then this hose goes out to our 500-gallon tank out in the yard. So there's a regulator, which is what this is right here. There's a regulator at the tank, one at the house, and then one here. And although it was all hooked up, it was working, but this regulator was slowing the gas down to the point where we had to keep igniting the stove when we were cooking and things like that. So to get around that, I put a T down below the regulator and then added in another propane line hose. Hook that up to there, so now it's bypassing this regulator down there, and that has worked great. So we've been running off of the 500-gallon propane tank now for a couple days, and it's been working great. So I still have, these two are both full tanks, and then I still have another couple full tanks over there in case I should need them. and then dug through the shop, and I got some little space heaters there that I may hook up at some point, because next week's going to get below freezing every day of the week. Right now it's probably 40s and just an awful rain. One other thing, I'll show you inside here. Anyone who has been in a camper, lived in an RV, when it's cold out, knows that the inside can get really humid. So your windows, kind of hard to see on this, but you'll see a little bit of condensation around the windows here. Now yesterday it was just dripping in here. I mean, there was water just all over the place in all the windows. So what I did is we had this dehumidifier back in the shop, and I grabbed it. It also has a UV light inside just for air filtration. But what we found out when we turned this on, because we're off grid, I was concerned about the power it would use. It only used about 475 watts when it was just doing its running. I didn't catch what its peak watts were when we first turned it on. But that, blows out hot air out of the top. So not only was it dehumidifying, it was also heating the camper. And we typically have our thermostat set at about 70 degrees during the day. I got a new thermostat too. Our old one wasn't working very well, so I replaced this out with a digital version of the same type of thermostat. It seems to be accurate within about 2 degrees. But we usually have that set at 70 during the day and turn down to 65 at night. But we found out that if we ran the dehumidifier, that would keep the camper warm, because pumping out hot air, and it also would keep it dehumidified. So we got a double bonus there. Plus it's off the solar power, so it's not costing us anything. We weren't using any gas or anything like that. So that worked out really good. Kept the camper temperature up closer to 74, 75 degrees when we had it running versus the 70 we usually have it at. So it was drier and it was warmer. So it was a big plus on grabbing that dehumidifier. Anyways, we are 100% on the propane tank outside now for our gas. And then we've been using the solar now for about 3 weeks and 100% using that as well. So it's going pretty good. So I was talking in a previous video about the condensation we get on the windows, and camper's been closed up, and then we came in last night and cooked, and I washed my hair and things like that, so you can see all the condensation that builds up. Sometimes it gets so bad that the whole window is just covered.
Just washing all that hair.
Yeah, washing all my non-existent hair. So, still working on wiring. And today's our first day where it's been really rainy and really cloudy, and the solar panels haven't produced probably more than a couple hundred watts all day long. So right now we are at 75.9% state of charge. So that's a little scary. Still having an issue with the inverters. You see right now they're both showing positive. I think that's because Natalie's probably cooking something in the camper. So right now, it's if you add both those together, that's about 1.5, it's about 1500 watts that they were just pulling. Usually this one is showing 0. You look online and it shows it's actually a negative. So what I was told was that it's a calibration issue. I was not told when I put these in that I have to calibrate them. So I've got about a $500 part calibration tool. So I guess in the Schneider Electric on your inverters, if you have a multi-inverter system, you have to calibrate them before you start them. So there shouldn't be any damage to the ones from me going ahead and firing it up. That may have be some of the issues I'm having with just the negativity from one to the other. You know, one showing negative load, one showing a positive load. Add those together to get the actual load. I was under the assumption that maybe because I had such a low load that one of them was powering the other one, which is why one showed negative, one showed positive. They actually said that possibly could still be part of the case, but I need to calibrate them. So now I've got to order a $500 tool to figure that out that I'm going to use once. So that's just great. Everything else still the same. I've been working on my wiring. So on my box here, this is a new Leviton box. I screwed up because I started at the bottom. So the first breaker I put in was this one. It was the easiest one to get to, and I thought I'll just slap it in there and it'll be great. And it got us lights to the shop out there. Now got lights going, so I gave us some outlets to do some work off of. But the problem was, starting down here, every wire I put above that, I had to feed the ground wire back behind, and unfortunately it kind of mangled them a little bit. That's not as pretty as I would like it to be. Coming in from the side, what seemed like a good idea at the time, also ended up being harder than I initially thought, because each one of these wires I had to kind of bend back and push in there, so they're kind of mangled too. So definitely not the prettiest job that I have done, but it'll work. Here on the outside, I've clustered them in groups of 3 wires and run them down. These two, this is to the boiler and then to the air handler for the furnace. So I'm not going to tack these on yet in case I forgot a wire that goes down. And then I'll still have to run another, that's an 8-3 wire, that'll go to the dryer. So although we have a gas dryer, I'm going ahead and running wires to the stoves and the dryers, or the dryer, just because in case we happen to switch to electric at some point, that option will be there. I'm not going to buy the breakers for them, but it'll be all pre-wired and ready to go. So the only breaker that will be wired is to the craft room, because we are going to have electrical stove in there. But beyond that, everything's going fine, I suppose. The next set of wires will come out of the top. They're going to spray foam the decking here. It goes up to the 2nd floor, so that any smells from the garage won't seep up into there. So all my other wires should come out of the top up here, and that's a lot easier because you come in, you tighten your wire nuts, and then this comes down and turns over into it, so all your wires are nice and straight, unlike this kind of mangled mess I have here on the right. Nice about the Leviton system is that you have a neutral and your hot are on the same breaker. So as you can see on this one, there's a neutral bar built into the panel, whereas before you'd have to run all your neutrals down into something like this, into your ground. So there's my neutral right there, and of course it's tied to the ground on this side, and then my hots run up the middle. But nice about this is that if I didn't have this type of system, all these wires running down, I'd also have a white wire running down along with them, going into the same kind of bus bar here on the side. And that's just a lot more, it would have been really difficult the way I wired this. But anyways, so this is how that's set up. This is just a standard Leviton breaker. It's probably about $10. They're a little more expensive, but I do think it's worth it. I will be getting the smart breakers for almost everything else, and the smart hub, so I can actually check the usage by breaker. I can see exactly how many watts and how many volts is going through each breaker, to kind of judge how much power we're using where in the house. You will probably notice that this box is upside down. It doesn't matter which way you put it, because the breakers, they click left and right. So the only time you're supposed to have this, there's an up and a down, is if the breakers are set to be, up and down. Where these are left and right, they can go either way. So if I were to flip the box over, it would still be a left and right breaker. It doesn't matter. But turning it upside down allowed me to bring my lead wires from the inverter right into the main breaker. If it was turned around, I would have had to run these down up the side to the breaker at the top. As you can see all these wires here, I would have had to run them past all of those, and I didn't want to do that. Keeping it right here is simple. These are the only wires that are going to be here. All the downstairs wires are on this side, all the upstairs wires will be on that side. So these wires come out the side and go down. These wires will go up out the box, and then we'll head off to the house through this this bay right here. And again, there'll be 5 inches of foam or so in here, but I'll still have a good 5-6 inches to be able to get my wires and everything through. Fix my spaghetti works.
But it's so fancy.
Note on the wiring, this seems like common sense, but once the walls close up, of course you can't see where anything goes. So this is just a basic outlet box on the outside of a wall. Had to use a screw on this one. Sometimes the nail bends or you can't get through. This one looks like there was a knot right there, so I put a screw in there just to support it, which is fine. But you have your in and your out, or out and in, whichever it is. But this one is going to the next outlet on my right. This one is going to the next outlet on my left. So it makes it easy when you're tracing wires later to just know that if you put these in on the correct side, like, you know, come 2 wires through one side or things like that. It typically be 2 in the top and 2 in the bottom. You know, your right side goes to your next outlet to your right, your left goes to your next outlet to the left. So if I trace this wire here, and I will pin these to the wall, I'm just not at that point yet. So that goes, camera there. So we'll go around this bin, and I'm going to put it into that box right there. And then that box needs to home run back to the load center. If I don't get the bend right, I'll just have to redo it. Hey, at least I'm not like measuring it and snapping.
It looks like you're measuring it. Look at those nails. They're like perfect. They're staples, I guess.
They're not. The problem is when I hit, the board bends, and it's just like trying to hammer something on a trampoline. This is really hard wood.
Should I stop the video now? You need to pre-drill some holes. You need to pre-drill some holes.
No, because then it won't stay in.
Oh my god.
it's moved.
I don't think it's moved either. I think I'll stop recording.